Okay, the next script here is going to introduce the while loop. The while loop is obviously a loop like for is. That is to say, we're going to repeat some operations multiple times. But while the for loop is designed to repeat over a list, at least the for each loop that we've seen so far, the while loop is designed to repeat as long as a certain condition holds. And as long as that condition holds, the while loop will continue to execute. And as soon as that condition no longer holds, then the while loop will terminate, and execution will continue below the while loop. So the basic structure of a while loop is this. We say while, and then we have some condition, and of course, the condition is one of the things that we've looked at before. Something that returns a value upon completion, or has a truth value associated with it. So while, and we'll do, and then of course within that we have some operations that we do, and then we have done at the end. So let's look at what we're going to try to do this time using a while loop. And this is something you may have come across before in a math class or some other place. Not trying to kill you with math, but this is kind of an easy thing to do. We want to generate the Fibonacci sequence, and I give the first part of the sequence right here to the first number that's greater than 100. Well, you'll notice this is a sequence of numbers, right? 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. You notice they're all getting bigger as they go. Eventually, we'll get to one that's greater than 200. So let me tell you the secret of how the Fibonacci sequence works, in case you don't remember that. It starts with two numbers, 1 and 1. And those are given, those are defined. And the next number in the sequence is the sum of the two numbers before it. So this number right here would be the sum of 1 and 1. And I know you know what 1 plus 1 is, right? That's 2, so that goes there. This one becomes the sum of the two numbers before it. So that would be 1 plus 2, which is 3. This one is the sum of the two numbers before it, which are 2 and 3. 2 plus 3 is 5, so it becomes 5. 8, of course, 3 plus 5 is 8. 5 plus 8 is 13. What's the next one? 8 plus 13 is 21, right? So, hey, why don't I add it, right? 13, and we'll add 21. What's the next one after 21? Well, that would be 21 plus 13, or 13 plus 21, right? Which is 34. What's the next one after that? Well, you get the idea. Okay, so this is a pattern that repeats forever and ever and ever. But we don't want to repeat it forever and ever and ever. We'd let our computer crunch on it, and we'd go away, and we'd come back in 10 years, and it would still be working and providing output. That's not very helpful. So we're only going to do the first some number of them until we reach the first one that's greater than or equal to 200. We'll go ahead and spit that one out, but then we won't do any more after that. So how's that? So let's take a look at how we would put that together. The first thing, I told you that we've got the first two numbers that are kind of given for us. And at any time, we really need to keep track of two numbers, don't we? Because when we were looking at computing the value here, 2, right? Given those first two, what did we need to know? We needed to know what the one before was and what the one two before it was, right? So we need to know that one and that one in order to calculate this one. By the time we get to the 13 here, to calculate that 13, what do we need to know? I don't need to know the 1 and 1 anymore. I just need to know this one that's 2 behind, and then the one that's 1 behind, 5 and 8, because I just need to add those together. So we can create two variables that will change as we go along. Why don't we call them fib1 and fib2, and I'll say fib1 is 1 and fib2 is also 1, because remember the first two numbers in the sequence are 1 and 1. Okay, so what we can do then is, let's go ahead and output those because those are the first ones in the sequence that we need to output. So we'll output without a new line character, and let's say we'll say we need dollar signs, don't we? Fib1. Okay. I don't know. What do we want? How do we want to do this? Which one do we want to call 1 and call 2? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. We'll just say output fib1 and a comma and a space, and then we'll say fib2 like so. I think that'll do it. Okay. And what's the condition that we need to express? Don't know. Let's deal with that in a second. Okay. Whoops. Between the do and the done. Let's look at what we're going to do on the inside. So assuming we're not to the place where we're going to stop, okay, what is it that we're going to do? Well, we need to go ahead and output the next Fibonacci sequence, right? But we also need to change the variables that we're keeping track of, fib1 and fib2, where 1 is the one that's 1 behind us, and 2 is the one that's 2 behind us. See, it'd make more sense if I did it this way. This is what I was thinking before. That's the one that's 2 behind the first number that we're going to output, and that's the one that's 1 behind. Okay, so what do we need to do then? Well, we can do this to calculate the new value, right? We'll make a new variable temp. We'll say temp is whatever fib2 is. And that allows us then to say that fib2 is going to be whatever fib1 is. And now fib1 is going to get a new value. What's fib1? Fib1 is going to be, what is it going to be? It's going to be whatever used to be in fib2 and whatever used to be in fib1 added together, right? Well, what used to be in fib2 is now in temp, and what used to be in fib1 is now in fib2. So temp plus fib2, right, is what I want here. So I can do that. Command substitution. I'll use the expression command, and it's just $temp plus $fib2, right? So fib1 is that. And now why don't we just go ahead and echo the new value. We probably don't want that on a line by itself. We're trying to make a list. And we also need the comma and stuff, right? But the thing is, the last time it goes through, I don't want to have this trailing comma and space as if there's more, right? So why don't we do that up here? We'll just echo -n, and we'll go ahead and put in a comma and a space. So what am I doing that for? Well, each time we go through this loop, what I want to do is start by saying, okay, well, whatever the list was before, put a comma and a space, and now output the next number. And now do the same thing again, output a comma and a space, and then calculate the new number and output it. And each time I'm updating these, so fib2 marches 1, and fib1 marches 1 forward, right? And so what do I want to do? How about, what is the condition then? The condition is the situation that we're going to stipulate to continue executing the loop. And what do we say? We want to go to the first number that's greater than or equal to 200. So that means that we're going to keep doing this as long as fib1 is less than 200, right? That's all it is. So let's just say exactly that. So while we'll say fib1 dash LT is less than 200. So what do we have? We output the first two numbers, which are just 1 and 1. Those are given. That's part of the sequence. And then as long as fib1 is less than 200, which it starts out to be, doesn't it? Then we output a comma and a space. We let temp be whatever fib2 is. Fib2 becomes fib1. Fib1 becomes the sum of temp and fib2. In other words, what used to be fib1 and fib2, right? And so fib2 and fib1 each have kind of marched to the right by 1, right? And now I go ahead and output the current number, fib1. And then I do it again. Now fib1 has gotten bigger, hasn't it? So we go back to the top and we say, is fib1 still less than 200? Yeah, because fib1 was 2 this time. So we do it again. Boom. Now fib1 is 3. Is it less than 200? Yes. So we do it again. Boom. Now fib1 is 5. Is it less than 200? Yes. Then 8, then 13, then 21, then 34, and etc., until finally we say, no, fib1 is not less than 200 anymore. It's greater than or equal to 200. We've already output that. So now then, at that point, we stop. And so we can, at that point, go ahead and, again, finish our line, right, like so, and then we'll exit with a 0. We could finish our line a different way. We could just go ahead and, since it is a sequence that goes on forever, we could have one more comma and then say ... I think I like that. Okay, so let's write it. We'll exit it, and let's chmod, whoops, not that much, chapter 13 dash fib, and yeah, let's just execute that and see, whoa, what do we get? Command not found, and something is kind of going on forever and ever and ever. I'm going to hit Control C to stop the run right here. And let's see what the problem is. It's got a, let's see, line 15, 1 equals 2. Not sure what's going on there. Let's take a look. Okay. Line 15, 1 equals 2. Where's our problem? Okay, so yeah, there it is. I see it right here. See the problem? This is incorrect. Fib2, fib1, right? No $sign when we're setting a value, $sign when we're reading a value. Easy mistake. Everybody does it all the time. And let's see what that, there we go. And that's what we're looking for. Okay, so when you have things like that, Control C is your friend. Sometimes Control Z if it's looking for input, but you won't have that problem until next week's content when we start reading the user's input. But there we see the Fibonacci sequence generated, and it looks like 233 is the first number that's greater than or equal to 200 that's generated. And that's the Fibonacci sequence. So what's the point of all of this? Not really learning the Fibonacci sequence. The point is the while loop. The while loop executes until the condition indicated within the square brackets becomes false. In this case, until fib1 is no longer less than 200. And then it stops executing, and execution continues after the line that says done. So that is the while loop. So when you use a for loop, when you use a while loop, you'll gain some more experience with this. But generally, your for each loop, you're going to use when you have a list and you want to iterate, that is, repeat operations on each item in a list. The classical for loop, which we'll see in the next section here, is going to be used when we know a number of times that we want to do something. It's I need to do this 20 times, whatever it is. And we have a counted number of times that we want to accomplish some task. And that's for the for loop. The while loop would generally be used when we don't know how many times we're going to do something. I didn't know if it was going to be the first 10 Fibonacci numbers or the first 20 or the first 30. Because obviously the numbers grow, right? Look at the list up above. The first two Fibonacci numbers are both 1. But the fifth Fibonacci number is 5, and the sixth one is 8, and the seventh one is 13. So I didn't know if it was going to be, 10 of them or 15 of them or 20 of them or how many it was going to be, only that we wanted to go until we reached a number that was greater than or equal to 200. So since we didn't know how many times, typically you'd use a while loop for that. There's another kind of loop called the until loop. Very analogous to other programming languages. If you've done any other programming, they'll generally have a loop type called repeat until. So it's very much like that. So if you've seen that in other contexts, then it could be familiar. You'll want to look at that one. I'm not actually going to do any examples with that one, but there is one in the text. That's page 346. So I do recommend that you have a look at it and be aware that that's available. It's also very much like the while, little nuance and subtlety in when it's used. But I don't want to just kill you with all the different types. So have a look at it. Know that it's there, but we won't use it yet. And perhaps at some point in the course we'll have some occasion to do so.